What you need in the building? What's happening, everybody? What's happening? What's happening? We're gonna have a little discussion. We're gonna have a little talk on boxing. I am somewhat tired, so that's why I am wearing shades. Um, but we're gonna talk about the weekend's fights as well as we're gonna talk about old school versus new school for a number of different reasons. Because I see this topic coming up a number of times, and to me, it's just the same thing over and over again. And I want to talk about it a little bit. Different people feel that the game has been changed up in boxing, but for me, it's pretty much the same thing I'm seeing. Boxing's been the same for many, many years. Yeah, some of the formatting has changed up, some of the rules have changed up, but pretty much boxing is the same to me all the way through. So we're going to talk about boxing. And I am what you need. You're watching my channel. If you like what you're seeing, don't forget you can subscribe. Also, I'm not going to take too long with this stream. I'm going to try and keep it to a minimum. We got the weekend fights to talk about, so we'll chop it up with the weekend fights as well. And your boy, what you need, is going to bring it down to you. If you feel you want to participate, you want to come in here and talk to me, chat with me as well, we can do that. We can chop it up. The link is in the chat section. That's the link right there. So feel free to do so. We'll be talking about the weekend fights. That means we're talking about Gervonta Tank Davis versus Hector Garcia and the undercard of that. So we'll be getting into all of that as we go through these topics. You know what you need, like to mix it up. Y'all never know when what you need is going to pop up on y'all. So I kind of like doing that. But that's just the way how we do things up in here. So usually I just kind of pop up on the scene. All right. So we're gonna start chopping it up right now. We're not gonna waste any more time with you guys. All right, we're gonna chop it up right now. All right, so what you need in the building. You guys want to come through again, the link is in the chat section. I'm gonna just drop it down one more time for you guys to see, and you guys can know what to do. And you can just pop in as a guest. All right, what you need in the building. Let's talk some boxing. This is what it is, so let's get to it, right? All right, first things first. Let's see if I can get this lighting correctly here. Okay, so for some reason, so crazy. This world is so crazy. All right, this is what it's going to be. All right, let me talk to you guys about. Let's start this off right. We're going to start talking about Gervonta Tank Davis versus Hector Garcia undercard. I'm going to start off with the televised undercard section. So the first thing we started off with was Boo Boo versus Deman Nicholson. Boo Boo obviously is Demetrius Andrade, right? Let me say this first of all. The underdogs in this fight, or the opponents of these name fighters, were live. They were very live, and I gotta say kudos to all of these opponents and their strategy and their game plan and how they decided to face these sort of star boxers, if we want to call it that. And one of them actually broke through and actually had success. My prediction, if you guys know, my 15-second prediction was that I expected all the favorites to pull through. Now on another platform on Facebook, I was in a Facebook boxing group. One guy was bashing these guys. He was bashing them. He was saying that the only guy in there worth salt was Roman Villa, who was facing, of course, Rashidi Ellis, also known as Speedy, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about Speedy versus Roman Villa very soon. But I'm just saying, that was his thing. Now, it's very interesting what happened in that fight, but nonetheless, we'll go through that as well. Let's start with Boo Boo. So, Deman Nicholson. First of all, I'm going to say this. DeMar Nicholson, he should have had a knockdown in that fight against Demetrius Andre. Andre was knocked down earlier in the fight, and then Andre came back later on in the fight to pretty much knock down DeMar Nicholson a couple times. All right. So there was about 3 or 4 times the guys hit the canvas. So even though it's an academic thing, because Boo Boo was still going to win on points, he did win on points because he dropped Nicholson a couple times, and Boo Boo was pretty much dominating every single round. Boo Boo did look a little bit more sluggish and sloppy in terms of how he usually conduct himself, how he usually fight. He wasn't even as fast as he usually is. But having said that, pretty much dominated the fight. But the thing about it is, even though he did dominate the fight, DeMar Nicholson, you could see his hunger, and you can see he was still in the fight. It was a fight all the way to the finish. Boo Boo coming up to 168. It's a bigger division, of course. DeMar Nicholson hit him with some body shots. DeMar Nicholson is really good at going to the body, and he really did a great job when it comes to that. And you know, it took Boo Boo a minute or so to get adjusted, the ring rust off of him, you know, feel his way around the ring, and then really find the range he needed to work at. And then from there on in the later rounds, he really took over the fight. And Boo Boo pretty much looked really good. I think he should take another tune-up before he goes into a fight with any one of those guys, whether it's Charlo or Benavidez or you know, maybe even Jacobs, you know, or Caleb Plant, or even Canelo. You know, I think he needs to, first of all, get another fight under his belt to sharpen up even more. Now, this was a good fight for him. You know, DeMar Nicholson has always been a durable guy. Even when Jesse Hart stopped him, he didn't really stop him because he was still on his feet. The referee kind of called it off, and he protested it. But Jesse Hart did drop him multiple times in that fight. Nonetheless, he always gets back up. And he put on a pretty good performance against Boo Boo. You know, he handled his stories. He landed his shots. He dropped Boo Boo, as we know. It wasn't counted as a drop in the fight. But he did drop Boo Boo. 2 body shots to the body, and Boo Boo went down. Boo Boo still managed to be the guy who separated himself from DeMar Nicholson. So it wasn't like, you know, DeMar Nicholson was giving Boo Boo an extremely competitive fight. It was competitive, don't get me wrong. But you could tell that Boo Boo was the better fighter in that fight. And also, Boo Boo was landing not as many shots as it looked like. He was more active. He was landing a lot of shots on Nicholson's gloves, actually. But Nicholson has pretty good defense as well. He shells up pretty well. But you could see Boo Boo was more active, 1. And then 2, when Boo Boo placed his shots, they were really well placed. And then on top of that, he dropped Nicholson twice to Nicholson's 1. So Boo Boo pretty much took that fight. And let me say this, though. Even though Boo Boo won that fight and he won some of the rounds of that fight, I would say that the fight was still a competitive fight, and it was still, the rounds were still kind of close. The difference between what Boo Boo was doing, what he was landing at least, and what Nicholson was landing wasn't that big a great a deal. Maybe it was just a punch or 2 that actually landed. Now, Boo Boo was much more active. He was throwing a lot more combinations, a lot more shots. He was backing up Nicholson. Nicholson at first, you know, was kind of backing up Boo Boo a little bit, and then he was starting to back up Nicholson. So ultimately, in the end, Boo Boo did his thing. And he definitely did win the fight, but it was a competitive fight still, interestingly enough. But I look forward to seeing more of Demetrius Andre. I'm looking forward to seeing him sharpen up a little bit more. I see him pushing punches a lot more now, you know, and he's not as quick, he's not as fast, he's not as fluent as he usually used to be. And he's going up in weight, so, you know, we'd expect him to be a quicker guy. We'll see how that pans out. Andre being hungry for the fights. Hopefully he can step up to the plate. He is putting on age on him. And so we will see. But Nicholson was in that fight. He was quite competitive. People were writing him off, and he ended up going the distance with Boo Boo and dropping Boo Boo. So that's very important for people to realize. Boo Boo did get the win, but Nicholson did more than people expected of him. You know, and he was saying, you guys counted me out and stuff. And he's really good on the inside. Nicholson, that's his thing. Body shots. You know, he's really good on the inside. He's strong. You know, I would like to see him again. Hopefully we see him in the future. This card had a lot of Afro-American people fighting. That was very good. Great card. Of course, there was the earlier part, untelevised cards, which I'll talk about separately without streaming. I think I may even sum up everything in a short. So that was that fight. So that fight is pretty much a pre-taste of what was going on for the night, because all of these opponents, man, they was game, game. They all were game. So the next fight that happened for the night was Rashidi Ellis versus Royman Villa. And this is a fight which Rashidi lost. And he did lose the fight. It wasn't a robbery or anything. But he lost the fight in the final rounds of the fight. So in rounds 7, 8, 9, and 10, he lost that fight. And I'm going to tell you why. So even though Roman Villa did not win the majority of rounds in this fight, Rashidi Ellis was always a step ahead of him. You know, was always boxing him. He was boxing a lot. And, you know, he wasn't really trying to knock him out. It was more boxing him, okay? And he was boxing brilliant, all right? But as Rashidi Ellis started to slow down as the fight continued onwards, and this was a concern of mine, and I think I put it up on Facebook, in a Facebook group. As he started to continue to go onwards later on in the fight, Roman Villa, there are two things Roman Villa picked up on him in his desperation too, but he picked up his rhythm. He picked up Rashidi Ellis's rhythm, and he was walking him down, and he was really starting to cut off the ring. And the second thing, because Villa started to land certain punches, the second thing that Villa was able to do was, because he's anticipating the moves that Rashidi Ellis kept on repeatedly doing, he was able to time him, and then the first knockdown was in the final round, the 10th round of the fight, where he did a leaping left hook. As Rashidi Ellis, he used his jab to measure out. So he had an extended jab there, measuring out as he was spinning out. And Villa, he threw a leaping left hook over that extended jab and caught Rashidi Ellis flush as he was moving backwards. And then his momentum, obviously, and the fact that he got caught flush knocked him down. And because of that, he basically, you know, was trying to go into survival mode and box him. And Villa jumped on him. He jumped on him. He wasn't giving him no chance at all. And that's typical of Villa. I saw, you know, a number of fights with Villa, and he jumps on guys. And he really started crashing them. He was just throwing punches. He knocked down Rashidi Ellis, I think, 2 more times other than that. I know they only counted 2 knockdowns, but it was about 3 knockdowns, almost 4 knockdowns. Rashidi Ellis got knocked down a number of times. He did finish the fight, and he did try to bring the fight to Villa, but he lost the fight. I mean, that's like a 10-7 round, right? So that put Villa way back in the fight, and then Villa was winning. I think Villa won round 7. Sorry, I think Villa came back in the second half of the fight. Villa was coming on strong, but he really started to win rounds. I think he won rounds. I think it would be more like round 8, 9, and 10. He only won 3 rounds, I think, of the 10 after 10 rounds, but he won them big. Like, you know, round 8, you know, he hurt Rashidi Ellis. Round 9, you know, he was dominating that round, and then he took like a 10-7 round. With round 10, right? He dropped Rashidi Ellis multiple times in that round. And so it was a big round for him. So, you know, yeah, you say to yourself, but Rashidi Ellis should still win that fight, right? That's what some people were saying it was a robbery, because it was a split decision win that Villa got over Rashidi Ellis. It was a split decision. And the reason being that Villa knocked down Rashidi Ellis multiple times in the final round, you know, dominated the final round. Because Rashidi Ellis was trying to pull out. Yeah, Rashidi Ellis was outboxing him for most of the fight. No, nobody's disagreeing with that. the thing is, you have to value when you hurt a fighter, and if you can repeatedly hurt that fighter, it counts for a lot more, especially down the stretch, than if that fighter, didn't get dropped. He got dropped like 3 times, I think it was, or 3 times, I think it is. So that's a 10-7 round. Maybe it was 4 times. I can't remember. But he got dropped multiple times. Villa was trying the entire night, and he was able to time Rashidi Ellis pulling out with the extended jab, because extended jabs keep the guy at bay and blind him, right? But Villa worked around that. He was desperate though. They was pressing on the gas. Villa and they was pressing on the gas. They didn't start early on. They was going with the boxing and trying to do their thing and trying to get him cut off the ring, whatever. And that was just brilliant with his footwork, right? But down the stretch, I knew Ellis was going to slow down a bit, and I knew if he just slowed down a fraction, because he kept on doing the same things over and over again, that Villa would catch up to him. And that's what happened in this fight. And so the fight swung in this final round. The fight swung completely, from Rashidi Ellis' hands to Villa's hands. And there's nothing he could do about it. People saying it was a robbery. That wasn't a robbery. It could have gone either way. You could have given Rashidi, because of all the good work he put up early on in the fight. Like you think of the fight between Provatnikov and Timothy Bradley. This was something like that, except the big crescendo happened at the end of the fight. You know what I mean? So, it is what it is. Villa got the decision. Ellis didn't get the decision. That's boxing. You know what I mean? And, the weird thing about it is, Ellis, they were talking about Ellis versus Boots. Ellis was saying he was going to beat up, Roman Villa. And, sometimes going into fights, you can get distracted by something else. And the media likes to do that. They like to distract it, tell you about the potential matchups with this guy and that guy and this guy. When you got a guy in front of you, you got to focus on the guy that's in front of you, And Rashidi, he was doing a good job, but it's just that, you gotta stay on point for 10 rounds. In this case, it was a 10 rounder. I think it was the IBF qualifier, one of the eliminators, right? So, man, I gotta say, man, I knew these guys were going to be game. They didn't just pick any old person. It wasn't supposed to be just a showcase, a tune-up exclusively, and these guys were just duds. People were making it out like these guys were duds, like D-Man Nicholson. And that's why I say I'm going to talk about new school versus old school in a minute with you guys, because I really truly believe that there's a lot that we just don't cover, and I need to cover it. And I'm covering it because, you guys say I'm a big Mayweather fan or whatever. I am a fan of Mayweather, don't get it twisted. But I think that there's a lot that you guys do not understand, and I need to bring it to the table, because Mayweather followed the rules. He followed the rules. What I mean by that is he never overlooked any opponent that was in front of him. That's the rules. You treat boxing well, boxing will treat you well. But you break a rule, you could get, boxing could treat you really bad. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of these youngins, a lot of these new school boxers and these youngins, they got it twisted. And I'm going to explain what I mean, okay, as we progress along. But I just wanted to say that Speedy, man, unfortunately, Speedy got caught. Speedy got caught, man. He got caught by Villa. Villa was coming. And we knew Villa was strong. And I'd seen something like this happening with Speedy versus the guy that beat up, what's the guy name? Another Latino fighter. I saw, beat up, what's the guy name? I forgot his name right now. The guy who goes, woo! The guy that beat him, Rashidi Ellis, he beat that guy. I forgot what the guy's name is though. But we'll talk about it a little bit more. Anyway, that was at the welterweight division. So Boo Boo, he went up to the super middleweight division, and he fought D-Man Nicholson, who is a a strong, career super middleweight. Rashidi Ellis, in his debut on Showtime, faced Roman Villa, and Roman Villa basically, or Royman Villa, he basically is Venezuelan. They say he's Colombian. I don't know which one it is, but he's a Venezuelan boxer. As far as I'm concerned, he carried the Venezuelan flag. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know about Colombia. Maybe he's Colombian. I don't know. But ultimately, Villa was able to catch up with him, unlike the other guy who couldn't catch up with him. Villa was able to catch up with him and catch him. And the reason he caught him was because he got his timing down. You can't be predictable in boxing. You can't just do a move and a guy, I know what he's going to do now. That's not good. And Villa is a smart boxer, obviously. He's not the most polished boxer. He's a pressure fighter, and he brings pressure. He knows how to keep distance. And what he was doing was he was timing Ellis, and then he threw that leaping left hook, and that changed everything. Because he was behind in the fight. He was coming. The momentum was in his favor, but he was behind in that fight, and he changed the whole damn fight by dropping Ellis a couple times. You know what I mean? It is what it is. This is the glorious sport of boxing. Ellis had it in the bag. All he needed to do was just, he needed to mix it up a little bit more down the stretch. And if you're slowing down, that's when you have to tighten up your defense. And he had that hand out there too long. I know he was trying to measure him to keep him at bay, but dude went around his hand. He slipped his hand, and he did a leaping left hook, and that was all she wrote. You know what I'm saying? Dude was desperate too. You could tell he was desperate, and that's what happened, and that's boxing. Boots versus Karen Chakazian. Let me tell you something, man. I said it again in the Facebook group. I said, the people were dismissing Karen. And I was like, listen, I've seen this guy box. Now, I think Boots will beat him. But I wanted to say, this guy come from a war. He came from Ukraine. The dude being in a war. There's nothing that Boots is going to bring to the table that's going to intimidate him. Right? And I remember Karen saying that they got a game plan for Boots. And they ran their game plan. And it was brilliant. He kept moving. He kept moving all night long. And he actually got some of his shots in on Boots, which is quite, that was something to see. And he boxed very well, moved around the ring very well. Boots couldn't stop him. Boots got a good number of rounds in. Boots said he was running. Dude wasn't running. This is a ring. He was boxing you. He was boxing you. If he went for a jog, that would be running. He didn't jog. He boxed you. Okay? He boxed you. Right? And you couldn't get your combinations off on him like you wanted to. And he was tough. He was tough. What I want fighters to do is say, man, the dude was tough. He was tough. I underestimated him and his footwork and his skills. They had a game plan, and they followed their game plan. And you know what? If Boots was 2 to 3 steps off, this dude would have taken the fight. Now, Boots won most of the rounds, okay? He won most of the rounds. My boy, Karen, he got a couple right hands in. Even in the last round, in the final round, he got some clicks in. They traded shots and stuff, but the dude stayed defensively responsible. You can't say nothing about the dude. Dude was playing defense. Okay, not a whole lot of offense that was landing and a whole lot of offense, but when he did throw his offense actually landed, which showed me that this dude was watching what Boots was doing. He was paying attention, and he knew what to do to counter. And I'm going to say this, these Eastern European guys, man, especially from the Ukraine, them dudes always, and they know their life is fighting. They being in a war, they defend their country. They go back to their country. That's what they do. I would say this. Lomachenko is going to be facing Devin Haney. A lot of people saying Devin Haney going to just beat Lomachenko. Lomachenko got a reason to beat Devin Haney. Okay, Lomachenko being in a war. Lomachenko is not going to have the same mindset as somebody who has not been in a war. Okay, These guys know what it is to fight for their country, even though he may not have been physically in the front lines. I know Usyk was, but these dudes know what war is, real war. So do understand these guys are gonna have a game plan. They're gonna have some kind of game plan to deal with it. They're not just gonna come to the table. This dude wasn't coming to the table to lose. Y'all can say what y'all want. Y'all can say he was running, whatever. He didn't come to the table to lose, and he was gonna find a method and a strategy to make sure that the terms was on his terms when he engaged with Boots, and he did the right thing, and he moved all night long. He didn't stay still for one. But the thing about it is, even though he moved all night long and was pot-shotting, you got to understand he did not move to the extent like Guillermo Rigondeaux, moving all around the ring unnecessarily. He wasn't making unnecessary movement. His movement wasn't wasteful. So that's how he was able to conserve his energy. And I got to say, man, I give this dude a lot of props. Karen Chukhazian, there's a reason why, he had a loss early in his career. There's a reason why this dude is what he is. And I would like to see him again. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I would like to see him again. Again, boxing. The sport is boxing. It's not knockouts. It's not banging. It's boxing. And say what y'all want. Y'all go in on Teofimo Lopez when the Spanish guy Sandor Martin, when Sandor Martin was boxing him, right? Y'all was saying, because Sandor Martin actually dropped him, right? Y'all was saying Sandor Martin won that fight. I ain't hearing nobody saying that about this dude versus Boots Ennis. This dude did very, very well. I'm not saying that he won, but I'm just saying, when you box a guy, it's harder. It's harder to deal with a moving target. It's harder to deal with a guy who has good footwork. All right. And so I really enjoyed this fight. As Boots was supposed to cut off the ring, Boots realized that. But it's not easy. It's not as easy as people think to cut off the ring on a guy who knows how to place his feet in the ring, knows distance, knows how to stay a certain distance away from you. And then when he's ready to engage you. And that's what you saw in this fight. Now, the guy was more defensively minded, but you think about it. This dude performed very, very well against Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis is not no guy you could just go up in the ring just like that and do what this dude did to him. I'm telling you right now. Now, Boots obviously going to make adjustments for that. And Boots has got to find a way to cut off the ring on those guys. And the dude was moving right, left, right. He's doing a Mayweather kind of thing on Boots. Because he was changing direction all the time, trying not to be as predictable, going in and out, side to side. He was doing it all. But again, and throwing feints as well. And that's a very hard style. You've seen it with in the 168-pound division. We had, forgot what the Puerto Rican kid is. He faced a guy like that. Then we saw Mikey Garcia struggle with Sandor Martin, right? Because Sandor Martin got that. It's not herky-jerky. He's feinting. He's feinting you, feinting as if he's going to come to you. Then he goes away. Or feinting you like he's going to come to you and he stands there. It's feints. And I'm going to just say this. That's the beauty of boxing. When you're not predictable. And that's what made Mayweather so effective, okay? When you're not the most predictable guy in there, then the other guy doesn't know what to do to counter you because he doesn't know what you're going to come with, right? So that's the little trick in boxing. Now, of course, if the guy don't respect your power, he just walk through your stuff and he beat you up. So you have to be tough, one. Two, you got to have decent power to be respectable. But ultimately, in the end, with boxing, it's about being as unpredictable as possible. And you're always trying to set up a guy. Guys like these guys that we saw, Karen, Chukhazian, Sandor Martin, these guys are not, considered elite guys. They're not considered the creme de la creme. But something about these guys? These guys understand boxing. They understand what is necessary with boxing. And so they're going to always do well. It's not just a jab. That's what this guy used many different tools. He varied range, he varied distance so that Jerome Ennis couldn't get him. When Jerome Ennis thinks he cornered him, he know how to spin out. He knows these little tricks, right? And that's always important when you're going up against the ropes and how to bounce off the ropes, how to move with the rhythm of the guy, because you're trying to get the guy's timing and rhythm so you can move with him. and mirror him somewhat. You know, it's all little tricks. Buddy McGirt, when he was fighting Pernell Whitaker, said he mirrored Pernell Whitaker. Whatever Pernell Whitaker did, he tried to do the same thing. It's called mirroring. So there's all these little tricks in boxing that you know, some of these guys, man, you know, Karen's a good boxer. Clearly, he's a good boxer. And Boots obviously underestimated him some. And therefore, when Karen started bringing the equation to Boots, Boots didn't exactly know what to do, which was very interesting. But I just thought I would talk about that a bit. The key that Boots needed to do was try and cut down the ring. He don't, you know, there's several different ways you can approach that. Um, but he needed to cut him off, you know, move with him. If he's changing directions, in other words, you cut down the ring in size. You know, you see Canelo do it, where he starts to cut the ring in half first, then he cuts it up into quarters, and that gets the guy right into a corner, and then from there, you know, you do your thing. But of course, a guy with really good footwork like Dimitri Bivol, you get him up against the ropes, you try to wail on him, and then he pivots out. You know what I'm saying? He bounces off of you or clinches you, whatever, and he pivots out. So it's hard to pin down a guy who really has good footwork in boxing. If the guy is constantly moving and you have to be a couple of steps behind, it's very difficult to cut off the ring on such people. All right. Of course, if you're the aggressor and that person's defensive and they're not throwing much punches, or they're throwing punches and they're not landing, and you're landing more punches, of course you win the round anyway. But it's just something that's worth thinking about. Okay, now we're talking about the main event, which is Tank versus Hector Garcia. Again, man, you gotta love the fight. The fight was a fight in which Tank took his time, but at the same time, he had difficulty with Hector Garcia's jab early on. Okay, Hector Garcia was boxing really good, and when Tank tried to close the distance, get past Hector Garcia's jab, Hector Garcia's left hand, yeah, I mean, he just pulled the trigger on it, and that left hand would just shoot out at him. I mean, hit Tank really hard, but Tank knows how to ride punches. So he could pull up on a heartbeat and ride the punch, and so you ride back or let his head move with the punch and ride the punch. So that's why Tank didn't get the damage that Hector did. Hector actually, in this fight, as you guys already know, got his eye damaged. Right, he couldn't see through his right eye. And that's because, of course, Tank hit him in the eighth round. Tank hit him with all kinds of things. Okay, he hit him with like a looping left to his right eye. So he was banging him. He banged him up really hard. Tank started pressing on the gas around the sixth round, 6, 7, 8. Tank was really starting to roll. I mean, he was starting to beat Hector up. But Hector's a tough guy, and Hector's taking the punches, and Hector was returning fire, right? Hector was landing some good body shots. He was, you know, he's picking them apart. Tank was kind of, you know, at first, Tank was just putting up the high guard and walking down, right? I heard Gary Russell and you know, his brother trying to critique Tank and stuff. what I'm saying is that Tank, was taking his time with Hector, trying to figure out the range to come at him. When he started landing one or two body shots and started stealing the jab on Hector, then I knew, okay, he's found the range. But Hector, man, Hector, a hell of a fighter, man. He's a hell of a fighter. The fight ended in a way that everybody was like, what? Why is he not coming out? It's not that Hector quit. His corner realized he couldn't see through his eye, and that's a risk. And so they said, okay, we call the fight off. Okay. So it's not Hector. Hector would probably have gone out there and fought. I don't know. I think it's his trainer or his corner that called the fight. Okay. But Hector was in it. It was a very competitive fight. I think Tank started to take over though in the sixth round. From the sixth, he was starting to up the pressure. Sixth, seventh, eighth. In the eighth round, Tank was really ripping shots. Okay, he was starting to rip shots, and it wasn't desperation. It was that he was crashing, right? He was putting real heat on Hector, because two things that Coach Calvin noticed was, one, Hector will circle to where his power hand is, right? So Hector was circling to Tank's. He was circling to Tank's weak side, right? And he was able to push back Tank initially, and then Tank started circling with him, so he wasn't pushing him back. And then the other thing is Hector does better fighting going forwards than backwards. But it's not just that. It's going backwards in the direction opposite to what he was going, right? Hector likes to kind of line up his backhand, right? And use his lead hand as a prod. He don't mind going backwards or forwards, but yeah. So Tank was pushing him. It was making him go backwards clockwise. Yeah, that's right. It's going backwards clockwise. So he was moving him out to his, that would be his left, Tank's right. And he's pushing back that way. And I believe that's what I saw. And so he was kind of uncomfortable now fighting going backwards. And then Tank now would get the advantage. And that's why he cut the distance. And that's why he started crashing him in round 8, because he found the right angle, So it was really interesting, because Coach Carlton, I can't remember what his name is. That's crazy. But anyway, Tank's coach, not Coach Kenny, the other coach, realized that Tank understood that, and he was there for cutting the angles right. It was just fun to watch. So Tank hurt Hector in the 8th round, and he couldn't see out of his right eye, and so the fight was called off. Now, would Hector be a problem for a lot of fighters? Absolutely, because Hector showed veteran composure. He showed lots of skill. Okay, his jab was really on point. Put away the jab because Tank started slipping the jab, and he also started to counter the jab. He was countering the jab because he'd be able to. He was sneaking in, kind of Canelo-like. He's sneaking in, inching until he found range, so he could counter the jab. So that's why Hector kind of put away that jab. Now Hector should have, and then Hector obliged him and say, "Oh, you want to fight on the inside? Let's fight on the inside, right?" So they both started fighting on the inside. Old school fighting, meaning both of them was using a version of the Philly shell, which was really cool, kind of Floyd Mayweather-like. Both of them did well. The sad thing about this fight, how it kind of ended kind of abruptly, was, I wanted to see the fight kind of go on a little longer, but obviously Hector with his eye. trainer did not want to take the risk of him messing up his eye more because, promising champion, he's a champion and all that at the lower weight class and everything. I thought Hector handled himself very well for moving up in weight, but we kind of knew that, he can fight anywhere between 130 and 140. He's big, he's strong. Unfortunately for him, another thing that Hector stopped doing was he stopped riding punches. So he was walking straight into the punch. That's the also reason. But I think it's because Tank took up the tempo. He took up the tempo. So he started changing the pace of the fight. In fact, he was rushing Hector. Hector was comfortable at the pace he was going when he was controlling the fight with the jab. As soon as Tank was able to disable some of his jab, and as soon as Hector obliged him and started fighting him on the inside, that's when Tank's in range now. Tank can do his thing. And then when Hector tried to reestablish the jab, now he was getting countered. On top of that, Tank was starting to pick up the pace. And he was throwing a lot of heat. He was missing a lot of shots, but he was throwing a lot of heat at him. And so that made Hector sort of like neglect or forget, to roll the punch. That's why he even got caught the way he got caught with the left hand that messed up his eyes, because he wasn't riding the punches anymore, and he wasn't rolling with them either. So, that's why he actually, he kind of, but again, the moment was probably, as composed as he was, he never been in a moment like that. And it was down the stretch, and Tank was picking up the intensity. He was gradually, kind of like Canelo, he was gradually picking up the intensity, and of course he's investing to the body where he can, but I thought that Hector pretty much dominated, or should I say was in control of the earlier rounds. So all the rounds from round 2 all the way up to round 6, even though the momentum was starting to change, Hector taking all those rounds. I think Tank now started to pick up, it was 7 and 8 really that Tank really did something convincingly serious, you know what I mean? But Tank gave up a lot of rounds. He gave up 5 rounds of the fight, from rounds 2 to round 6. Again, he's trying to close the distance. He's trying to figure out how to approach Hector, but like I said, I keep on explaining to people, people was talking about, oh, Tank gonna just wash Hector. Nope. This is a seasoned, skilled fighter, man, Olympian, all that, and Hector was in that fight all the way through. I thought he was ahead on the cards, actually. I was kind of surprised that Tank, but I knew that Tank, the thing with Tank was, I knew that Tank was measuring it and trying to figure out how to get to the inside. And when he started figuring it out and figuring out where to move Hector, where to put him, I think the fight changed from there on in, and that's where Coach Calvin was able to give Tank the right instruction, because, a lot of fighters, they used to doing certain things, they're used to moving certain places. And it's a very interesting thing when you make them have to move somewhere they don't want to move. Now let's see what they're really about, and that's what Coach Campbell realized about the real estate. And Tank started punishing him, and something broke. So yeah, so that's basically what I wanted to talk to you guys about with the fights, and I went into some detail with that. Let's go into now old school versus new school. What am I talking about when I talk about that? All right, so let me talk about these new fighters first. And a misconception by these fighters, I listen to some people say, well, Floyd messed up the game, and that's bullshit, okay? Floyd played by the rules. He always played by the rules. And a lot of these young fighters, they're very comfortable because they're making a lot of money. All right? I'm going to go into a lot of stuff, but trust me when I say, these new school fighters are great. They're fantastic fighters. I think fans today with social media get it twisted in the sense that they don't understand boxing. Everybody wants to have everything happen immediately. I think some people are spoiled by MMA. and the matchups that MMA affords or allows people. So it's all of these little variables that you got to consider. But the fighters themselves also they're getting twisted. Okay, some of these new school fighters are getting twisted. Back in the day, okay, you had something called the NABA or the NABF. So when somebody was to become a contender, they would have to win the NABA or NABF belt. This was the interim. This is what people call the interim belt today. Okay, there was only two belts. There was the WBC and WBA back in the the 80s, up until 1987, somewhere thereabouts. There was only two belts. So what happens is dudes be fighting for the NABF and the NABA, and if they won it, they was the mandatory for the champion, whether it was the WBA or the WBC champion. Okay, and the champion had to face them or he gets stripped. So that's how that used to go down, and it kept everything simple because there's a couple things. Some of these fighters out here haven't accomplished shit. Okay, but yet they behave like they had. Okay, and boxing is about accomplishments. Okay, we can't just say you the most skilled guy like a Jerome Ennis. He's a skilled guy. The eye test is a very skilled guy. Terrence Crawford, very skilled guy. Errol Spence, very skilled guy. But the difference between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford is they face the competition to show us that they are really great. And they can call money, they can call what paycheck they want, they can call who they want to face to some degree because they pay their dues, right? Terrence Crawford, 3 divisional world champion, fought, names, you know what I'm saying? Errol Spence, fought champions, at welterweight he's fought, how many champions he's fought at pound for pound fighters. So these guys can call the money because not only are they attraction, people pay to see them, but also, and they fill stadiums, but also the fact that they have dominated their division. They worked their way up to where they are. Okay. Now, when you think of a guy like Ryan Garcia, he worked his way up too. But this dude talk, but he don't walk. What I mean by that is he was supposed to face certain guys as his mandatory or face the champion as a mandatory. He forfeited a whole bunch of stuff. The weird thing about today is Ryan Garcia hasn't earned any stripes. You know what I mean? He hasn't won a championship. He's won an interim title. He beat I think it was Luke Campbell for the interim WBC title. He was supposed to face Devin Haney, never faced Devin Haney, right? And we see a lot of this foolery that's going on in boxing. Because boxers get paid more money today, they're comfortable. They whoever plots out the path that they're supposed to go, and they're comfortable. So what happens is guys like Rashidi say the money wasn't right. You heard him when he's talking about Boots Ennis. Rashidi versus Boot Ennis. Now we as fans would have loved to see that fight when they were undefeated because Rashidi lost this fight. But the point is, they talking about the money ain't right. Okay, I'm not saying boxers shouldn't get paid. I'm not saying go back to the exploitation days when they was paid nuts and thing, and until they became a champion, they started making some kind of money. I'm saying this: boxers today need to understand if you ain't done shit in boxing, you should be hungry to make something happen. And that's what we're not seeing. Floyd Mayweather, when he wasn't doing shit, when he was just fighting and beating up, what we call him, they were beating up cab drivers and shit, right? He was hungry to face champions. He was hungry to become a champion. And the reason you want to become a champion, ladies and gentlemen, is not just because you can be called champion for the rest of your life. It's not just because you make more money, ladies and gentlemen. It's because it's an accomplishment that is recorded on your record. And we're not just talking about any kind of champion, okay? We're talking about the champion. All right, we're not talking about no interim NABF title. Nobody gives a damn about that. Okay. Now, let me put it to you this way. Tank for hold on a second. Let me just go use the bathroom. I'll come back. Okay. Okay. Your boy back here. All right. So I want to go into this because I think it's worth the while talking about it in a comprehensive sort of way that people will understand and respect. Okay. Because I'm a guy that understands boxing as a sport evolves. So I'm not disrespecting the evolution of boxing. I have to have the respect to be able to view boxing, enjoy boxing, etc. Right? So I'm not trying to disrespect nothing, but I'm trying to say something to these youngins, which they got the wrong idea, you know, because a lot of these youngins, they misunderstand what Mayweather did. Mayweather followed the rules. He followed the rules. Okay. And these youngins, they don't know what the rules are anymore. So let me explain. So Ryan Garcia is one of them guys, you know, once upon a time, Floyd said, you know, belts don't make me, right? But do understand, he said that after he got the belts, not before. He wasn't saying before he got the belts, because he got the belt early in his career, right? He was like, what, a year and something in the game, and he won the coveted WBC title from the number one super featherweight in the world, which was Gennaro Hernandez. Okay? Gennaro Hernandez retired after that. Okay? And Gennaro Hernandez gave him the chance. What I'm trying to say is, before that, while he was beating cab drivers and all them kind of guys, and he stepped it up and he faced Tony Pep. Okay? That was the first guy that was legit. Faced Tony Pep. Okay? And when he faced Tony Pep and beat Tony Pep, he lined him up to get the WBC title, which Gennaro Hernandez kindly, instead of vacating the title, he kindly gave Floyd that fight. And that's what made Floyd. Okay? That's why he owed it to Gennaro Hernandez and the Gennaro Hernandez family to this day. Okay? Paid for Gennaro Hernandez's funeral and all that. So, Chicanito allowed Floyd to face him, which was an honor. Okay? And Floyd was able to win the first world title. And if you look at Floyd's reaction when he wins that first world title, he's crying. Okay? He's crying. He's saying, thank you, Jesus. He's crying. He went and hugged Chicanito after that and all of that. They was good pals and friends. Because that title, Floyd played by the rules. You get a title. And why are you getting a title? You're getting not just any title. Okay? The title. What do I mean by that? Today, there are many different belts. There's all kinds of belts. Okay? We have what we call secondary belts, and there are many different kinds of secondary belts. You got partial world titles, etc., right? Those are cool. They are nice stepping stones. But the thing you really want is the title, right? There are 4 sanctioning bodies right now. Okay, there's the WBO, there's the WBA, there's the WBC, and there's the IBF, right? The real titles of all of those sanctioning bodies are the titles where the dude that has the title is the man of the division. That is, he is the primary champion of the division. He cannot be a secondary champion. So, for example, Tank is a secondary WBA champion. Devin Haney is the primary WBA champion. The champion of that division in terms of the WBA is Devin Haney. Tank is not the champion. Okay, the belt that Tank has don't mean shit. Let me just be real. Okay, because as Floyd said, and as several of us and several people in boxing have said, there are too many goddamn belts in boxing. It's just what it is. It's too many belts. So what the WBA wants to do is they're trying to get the regular champion to face the super champion. So there'll be one champion in every division, and they get rid of the super champion title. Okay, it's because too many belts. Okay. And what it does is not only does it confuse fans, but it trivializes championships. Because you could have a regular champion, right, who's a secondary champion, and then you have a super champion. The real champion is the super champion, not the other guy, right? And if the other guy wants to legitimize himself, what he needs to do is face the super champion, right? So back in the day, and even with Floyd won a lot of belts, and he went after champions for that reason, okay, in championship fights, okay? It's important to play by the rules. If you want to make your own rules, that's when boxing becomes it becomes a pappy show, okay, because there's structures for a reason. You know, I listen to Andrew Ward say, why we have sanctioning bodies, why we have this, why I get where Andrew Ward's coming from, but there's a reason the sanctioning bodies are there. It's to give a certain structure and order to the thing. Now, if you want to form your own sanctioning body or you form your own organization between boxers, go ahead and be my guest. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying that you need to have something for the boxers to strive towards, a prize that's up there, that in a given division, only one man can have. Right? So, and that's very important because that adds value to the boxer until their name becomes something. And what I mean by that, I don't mean popular. I don't mean a popular name. Okay? I mean, based on what you've done in the sport of boxing, you've built a name for yourself. That's what I mean. Now, take, for example, Ryan Garcia, who hasn't done shit in boxing. I mean, let's put it this way. I don't mean to disrespect Ryan Garcia like that so blanketly. But what I mean is, yes, he faced Luke Campbell. Yes, he faced, what's the other kid's name? The guy who Jojo Diaz beat. Yeah, he faced them two guys. And they were sort of kind of like champions, right? Luke Campbell wasn't a champion, but this dude didn't even beat a champion, a real champion, a primary champion, right? Former primary champion even. Nonetheless, Ryan Garcia, he's going to be facing Tank Davis. Now, Tank Davis is definitely a name, definitely a champion in the sense that he's been champion at super featherweight, the only weight class where he's been a real champion. So that's a good fight. And of course, Ryan Garcia is a name, not just because of boxing, but also because of his social media presence. Tank's a name, but based on his boxing as well as his, not just his social media presence, but just the fact that he grew up in Baltimore, and he's a name in Baltimore, and he's known, you know, across. He's a sort of a guy that crosses genres and everything, and he's a name. Okay. Now, and Tank knocks out people spectacularly, so that's why people love Tank. But the point is, Tank versus Ryan is not a championship fight, even though they say it's a championship fight. It's not for the real title. What I'm trying to say to people is, I understand what the new school people are doing, but you have to earn your real stripes. You're not going to go into the Boxing Hall of Fame. All right? You're not going to go into the Boxing Hall of Fame if you haven't won a single world championship, and you could have. But you're saying, oh, it's not about the belts. Listen, Floyd said that after he got the belts, after he won a whole set of accolades, after he built his name. When he built his name was bigger than a belt. Of course, he don't need to fight for no more belts. But you're not there yet, youngins. Y'all not there yet, youngins. Now Tank be fighting for trinkets, right? They talk about Tank's the best guy in the division. That's bullshit. That's again trying to break the rules. He's not the best in the division. The best in the division is the guy who has all the belts, and that's Devin Haney. Tank don't even have a single belt in that division. Okay, we gotta be real. You gotta follow the rules. If you break the rules, now we just doing a pappy show. We're just having fun for entertainment purposes. All right. The best guy in the division, this is just how it go, is the guy with all the belts, the guy with all the hardware. Until you beat that guy, you are not the best in the division. And that's just the facts about Tank. Is Tank a cash draw? Is Tank a draw? Absolutely. But so was Arturo Gatti. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So these youngins need to understand the rules of boxing. I'm not one of them OGs that's inflexible. I'm not one of them OGs who gonna bash them. No, but I'm just saying there's rules, and you got to keep with the rules, okay? Because your legacy is dependent on that. And yes, legacy is something in boxing, because that's what gets you money, right? That's what gets you money after you retire from boxing. If you have a good legacy, you can live off of that. Like Floyd's living off his legacy. He's living off his. That's why people will pay millions of dollars to go see him do a stupid exhibition. He's milking it. He's milking the game because he's got a legacy. And this is what these youngins don't understand. You got to build a legacy first. You know, you got to build something. You got to do something. You got to face some people, right? You got to be a world champion, right, Ryan Garcia? You got to be a world champion first. But you're not a world champion. Even if you would have beat Tank, you're not a world champion. You would be a secondary world champion. That's like being an IBO champion or something. You know what I'm saying? Or NABF or NABA. You're not a real champion until you beat a real champion. You know? So you got the real and you got the fake. Devin Haney be doing the real stuff. He's on the real. He's gonna be facing a former world champion in Vasily Lomachenko, and it's not gonna be an easy fight because Vasily Lomachenko ain't gonna go in there to lose. He gonna have a game plan, right? I've seen these Ukrainians, and I realize these guys, they're not going in there to lose. You know, Lomachenko, as much as he's talking about Devin Haney's big and everything, when he starts to grit his mind into the direction that he need to go in, they're gonna come up with a plan, and it's gonna be a good fight. It's gonna be a good fight. You know, people thinking that Devin Haney just gonna roll over Lomachenko. It's not like that. It's not like that. Loma's gonna do his homework. He's gonna do what he had to do to make sure he can, make sure he got it right. Know who he's facing. He'll come up with a game plan. We'll see. You know what I'm saying? You know. But Devin Haney's doing it the right way. He's doing it the right way. He's honoring and following the rules of boxing. Yeah, we know about Jake Paul as well. But he ain't not making all that money anymore. You know why? Because not only are people sponging off the pay-per-view and people are, looking for ways not to pay for pay-per-view, but also in addition, even though he's going through the motions, Jake Paul is trying to make money, as much money as he can, off of debutante fights. He's not even a prospect yet. He's still a debutant. You know what I mean? And so you have to understand that. You have to understand and respect what's going on. A lot of these guys, Jake Paul is a perfect example of that. They got all this celebrity and all this stuff. And they may be working their ass off, but they got celebrity and all this stuff off of something that had nothing to do with boxing. You see what I'm saying? And kudos to Jake Paul, but you got to understand, Jake Paul, you ain't done shit in boxing. Nothing. You still at the starting line. You beat Anderson Silva, and that's great. But you still at the fucking starting line. You know why? Because Anderson Silva, he a debutant too. He's had a lot of fights. Beat Julio Cesar Chavez. But he hasn't had a lot of fights. You still at ground zero. You ain't done nothing in the sport yet. And if you feel like, you putting on all these big fights and you're a promoter and all of that, that's cool. But when it comes to boxing, you ain't done shit. Right? Now we can take you seriously as a boxer, but you still haven't done shit. You haven't faced even a boxer. You haven't faced anybody who's a legitimate boxer. You haven't done that yet. I mean, you have in terms of Anderson Silva was a, shows that he has boxing skill and all that. But I'm just saying, you still haven't faced a boxer in boxing. Okay, with more than 10 fights. You haven't. All right. Now, let's keep it a buck 100. So what I'm saying is I'm not saying that I knock these people for what they're doing, but everybody's talking about how fighters not making the fights. No, that's been so forever. Like since way back in the day, fighters been kind of skirting around other fighters when they think the fight's too tough and they're not getting paid for it. So this is not nothing new to boxing. But the problem with it is when people beating their chest and behaving like if they somebody in boxing when there's nobody in boxing. You ain't done shit in boxing yet. All right? So you got to understand you got to do something in boxing first. You got to do something in boxing first. Win a championship or, beat a big name in boxing, or beat a couple big names in boxing or win a couple of championships in boxing before we could talk to you as if you need to get the big bucks. Like you could start kind of calling some shots because you's the man in boxing. Y'all not no man. There ain't no man in boxing right now in terms of the lightweight division. If there's anybody who could call the shots and be called a man in boxing right now in the lightweight division, it's Devin Haney. Ain't nobody else can do that. Why? Because Devin Haney got the straps. You got to get the straps first. And neither Tank, neither Ryan, Teofimo had some straps for a minute. Kambosos had some straps for a minute. Loma had some straps for a minute. But all them other guys, Shakur, all them other guys at lightweight, none of you guys have any straps. So what the hell y'all talking about? Yeah, y'all have the kind of name because of the amateurs and your pedigree and all of that. Y'all got some name, but y'all ain't facing each other. This is another thing. I'm gonna explain what I mean by this. Because, again, I'm not against guys developing, and being carried along and match made how they need to. This has been something that's been doing forever in boxing. So I'm not mad at that. But I just want them to be fucking real. All right? Be real about it. Don't be like, I want to face this guy. I'm going to face this dude. I'm going to face this one. And you're not going to face nobody. And you know you're not going to face nobody. They moving you along. Be real about it. You know what I mean? As Jerome Ennis' father would say, Bosie Ennis, nah, I mean. I even hear his son, nah, I mean. It's so funny. You got to be real about it. You got to understand where you are in the game. And there's nothing wrong with aspiring and talking the talk and calling out people and all of that. We get it. But we don't I don't like people who cry wolf and there ain't nobody there. I don't like it. It's stupid. And I find there's too many people, we can't take their words seriously. Their words like mud. It don't mean shit. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with it. Now, I mean, that's the problem with it. So, I'm talking this boxing because old school versus new school is a very interesting thing. I see guys like Rashidi Ellis talking about the money wasn't right. What the fuck you talking about the money wasn't right? What do you mean by that? What have you done to earn that kind of money? It's not that boxers are overpaid. I'll never say that. But I'm just saying, who did you beat to make a face with Jerome Ennis? That's something that we need to have down the road. Bullshit. Both of y'all need a name. That's why you face each other. You ain't gonna build a career off of nobody. You gotta face somebody. If you never had a world championship, then goddamn it, face somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's the funny thing about it, right? You can't say Floyd didn't do that. So when people say Floyd spoiled the game, what the fuck you talking about? The man was at the top of the game. When you're at the top of the game, you call the shots. It's just what it is. These motherfuckers are not at the top of the game. The only guy who should be able to call shots up in here is Devin Haney. Okay, Devin Haney should call shots. Tank, because Tank bring the money. Okay, Tank's a money fight, so he could call shots too, and he's been a world champion. All right, multiple times. You know, real world champion, but at super featherweight, right? So he could call some shots. But to say and what the shots he's calling is really good. I mean, Hector Garcia is a much better opponent because he's in his prime. He's young. Yes, he moved up in weight. That is true. But he does fight. He can fight all the way up to 140. You know, he's a big, strong guy. You saw that Tank was fighting a big, strong guy. So Hector Garcia, better opponent. Tank's actually had the best opponents in all of these stars. Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. You know, what's the kid's name? Who's at lightweight? This some other lightweights. You know, whether it's Pitbull Cruz, whether it's Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn Davis. Tank got the best resume in all of them. Not at lightweight per se. Well, I guess you could say lightweight too because he faced Pitbull Cruz. But he got the best resume in all of them. Why? He faced world champions. He's faced a number of world champions. I mean, real world champions. I'm not talking about fake world champions. I'm talking about real world champions. All right, he's faced a number of them. All right, from Pedraza all the way up to the most recent world champion he faced. Who was the most recent? I'm not going to include Barrios. Barrios not a real world champion. Leo Santa Cruz, right? That was the last real world champion he faced. So he faced about 4 or 5 real world champions. How many have these guys faced? How many has Ryan faced? Ryan hasn't faced a single real primary world champion. Not a single one. Okay? That's the real talk. It's all hype and it's cool, but you ain't done shit in boxing, bro. You ain't done nothing. Tank's done something in boxing. Okay? Shakur, I don't think Shakur. I think Shakur fought for vacant titles or some shit like that. Did Shakur beat anybody? I think he did. Yes, he beat what's the kid name? What's the guy name? The military guy. I forgot his name. But anyway, he did beat somebody for a title. All right. All I'm saying is though, Shakur, he ain't done shit in boxing. I mean, he's done some stuff in boxing, but he ain't done shit in boxing. Oh yeah, he beat him, and he also beat Oscar Valdez. Can't remember the other guy's name right now, but it'll come to me. Yeah. Jamal Herring. He beat Jamal Herring and he beat Oscar Valdez. That's the 2 champions he beat. I think in featherweight he didn't beat no champion. You know, so that's basically it. I mean, look, the thing about it is, I think he fought for a vacant title, something like that. The thing I'm saying anyway is, them guys ain't got the thick. They don't have a deep resume. Okay, you look at Devin Haney, Linares, Jojo Diaz. He beat Jojo Diaz, Linares, and the guy who beat Teofimo Lopez, Cambosis. All right, he got 3 world champions. That's it, right? Tank, they are legitimate champions. One is unified, but the point is, I'm making is, Tank got a pretty good resume, you know, but people be shitting on Tank, you know, because you know he faced secondary champions and stuff. And we want to see Tank face some of these guys coming up. You know what I'm saying? And these guys not facing each other. The first guy to face another guy, or at least is considered like the future in boxing, is Tank versus Ryan. That's the first one. Nobody else is facing anybody else. You know, Devin versus Shakur is not happening. I mean, Devin's going to be facing Lomachenko, but then again, Devin versus Lomachenko is a good fight and everything, but Lomachenko's not in his prime. Let's be real. Lomachenko's not in his prime. You know what I mean? Devin did face Cambosis, who was in his prime. You know what I mean? That was an actual world champion. Tank ain't faced no actual world champion at lightweight, so I get that. He's facing Ryan, but Ryan's in his prime as well. You know what I mean? So the bottom line I'm making is this: I know Devin wanted to smoke with everybody, but you got to be hungry. You got to be hungry. You can't be comfortable. A lot of these guys, I'm not saying they don't train every day. I'm not saying they're but the problem with them is I don't think they're hungry like that. You know, they're not hungry to establish themselves. Now, Javante Davis has kind of established himself some, but he's still. I don't feel like he's pushing it. He don't want to be. He don't want to be the best. I lightweight. I don't see that hunger. You know what I mean? I mean, he is the most accomplishing of all of them, but I don't see that hunger. I don't see him wanting to face Devin Haney and beat him. You know, he want Ryan because Ryan bring the money. But I don't really see him hungry to face Devin Haney. He don't look like a hungry guy. You know what I'm saying? And that hunger to be the best is not really there anymore with a lot of these fighters because they ducking each other. They really are straight up ducking each other. Right? Charlo is a clown. Charlo be I'm not talking about small Charlo. I'm not talking about Jamel. I'm talking about Jamal. Jamal is a clown. He called out Benavidez. He don't want to fight. He called out Canelo, and I hear he backtracked on that. You know, he's now trying to face Demetrius Andre. Andre's coming across to see if he can get the fight with Charlo. I mean, what is up with these guys, man? Why are you so comfortable? I know you're a two-time world champion, but I mean, come on now. Come on now. You're too comfortable. You're comfortable just coasting and facing nobody. You ain't going to go in no boxing Hall of Fame that way. I'm just saying. Where's that hunger? Where's that desire to be in the Boxing Hall of Fame? Terrence Crawford saying, man, I'm cool. I'm going to Boxing Hall of Fame. Facing who at welterweight? Who? Sean Porter? Kell Brook? That's it? The only top 10 guy you going to face is, I think, Porter? Come on, man. This is the kind of thing. They try to quote Floyd, not understanding Floyd was at the end of his career when he was talking about Pacquiao. And if Pacquiao fight don't happen, well then. But he was at the end of his career. Is Bud at the end of his career? You know, these are the questions I try to ask because Bud, he don't face the best. He don't face the best. Right? It's just what it is. He's not facing the best. You know, we won't call you pound for pound number one in the world, but you're not facing the best. You're not even facing a top 10 welterweight. You're not trying to face that. And that's the thing that bothers me. You know what I mean? I know guys need to make money and so on. But come on, man. Step your game up. Look, Tank stepped up his game. He actually faced Hector Garcia. Then he's going to face Ryan Garcia. And maybe he'll face Davis or Stevenson or whoever. You know what I mean? But it's something, though, to see. It's something to see these guys, you know, run their mouth, but they're not serious about what they say. You know, Wilder meant every word that he was saying. How about these guys? That's all I got to say for you guys. I am what you need. I'm going to catch you guys later. Enjoy the video. Peace. I'm out of here as we go to 1 hour and 20 minutes. Peace.